Good evening and welcome to WANA Live, the reading series of the Writers Association of Northern Appalachia. I'm your host, Damian Dressick, and this is your other host,
Christina Fasonic, broadcasting from Wheeling, West Virginia. A very snowy Wheeling, West Virginia tonight. It looks like we have about an inch-ish of snow out there, and we don't know. I mean, the weather forecast I saw was 1 to 24 inches. So, we have no idea. I think that's a good guesstimate. How about you? Is it snowing in Slippery Rock?
It is. It's delightful to see snow finally coming down. I was in a parking lot and it just looked so wonderful and wintry. So I'm very excited about the finally appropriate weather. I see you've even got some still holiday decorations in the background there.
Well, today is Old Christmas in Appalachia, also the Epiphany. So it's the last day, the last night for my evergreen back there before it comes down and goes outside for the first fire of summer. So always thinking ahead about the next season. Unlike you, I dislike winter. And I hope that tomorrow it's 95 and it's not going to happen. So here we are. I know, I just need to move. Why do I live in West Virginia if I don't want winter, right?
I don't know, Christina, but while we all ponder that, let's talk about our guest tonight.
Absolutely. I am really excited about our guest this evening. Eliot Parker is going to be on with us. He is the author of the short story collection Snapshots, which won the 2020 Pencraft Literary Award and the 2021 Feathered Quill Book Award for short story anthology. His thriller novel, A Knife's Edge, that makes it a different book entirely, was an Amazon #1 bestseller. He has received the West Virginia Literary Merit Award for his works and has also been a finalist for the Southern Book Prize in Thriller Writing in 2017 for his novel, Fragile Brilliance. Eliot teaches writing at the University of Mississippi. So let's bring Eliot on and talk with him for his novel, Fragile Brilliance. Eliot teaches writing at the University of Mississippi. So let's bring Eliot on and talk with him for his novel, Fragile Brilliance. Eliot teaches writing at the University of Mississippi. So let's bring Eliot on and talk with him.
So while we're hearing from Christina repeatedly, good evening, Eliot.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
So while we're hearing from Christina repeatedly, good evening, Eliot.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
Good evening, Eliot. Eliot, I have no idea what's happening. We've never had anything remotely like this happen before. It seems like it's gone away, though.
Yeah.
There we go. I was getting some echo or double echo or something, but now I think we're good.
There was
yes, I thought I should have never given you all those powerful hallucinogenic drugs.
No, it's like there was 3 of me all at once. Your worst nightmare, Damian.
Well, no. I also was echoing, as was Eliot. So it wasn't. I don't know. It was some kind of ghost in the StreamYard machine. So no, it's really great, Eliot. Those are some really major accomplishments. I'm really looking forward to hearing you read. As a matter of fact, before any more technical shit goes wrong, let's get off the air and we're gonna let Eliot read. And we'll come back.
Yes.
Okay,
absolutely.
Great. Thank you so much, Damian and Christina. Thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan of the program. I appreciate the work that you all do in putting this on for authors and for readers. I think it's a great way for folks to stay in contact with literature and writing and books and everything that's going on in the literary arts. As we continue to come out of the pandemic and we continue to try to get back to more in-person events and more opportunities to gather together. So I appreciate the work that you all do in putting this on. And thanks so much for having me as your first one of your first readers of 2022. So I'm going to read an excerpt from my new thriller novel called A Final Call. And this is it right here. This centers on and focuses on a Cleveland homicide detective named Stacy Tabbitt. And this is a sequel to a previous book, the first book in the series called Code for Murder, which introduces Stacy Tabbitt as a character. And in this particular book, in Code for Murder, she is trying to solve the murder of a Cleveland Browns football player. It's set in Cleveland, Ohio, and so she's trying to find out who killed a Cleveland Browns football player and why, and what would be the reasons that someone would want to target him. And so the excerpt I'm going to be reading from tonight, A Final Call, picks up a few months after the end of Code for Murder. And basically the premise of this story, this entire book, is that Stacy is approached by a former college classmate of hers named Monica DeVito, and her son Colton has gone missing. Monica's son Colton has gone missing. And Monica suspects there's foul play, that something is wrong, that something has happened to him. And at the beginning, Stacy starts to think that maybe she's just being a little over-concerned as a mother. But as Stacy starts digging into it a little bit more, she realizes that Colton is up to some situations and some problems that are much more than she even anticipated. And so this excerpt I'm going to read from tonight comes from chapter 2. And I chose this because if you're not familiar with Stacy Tabbitt and her story, and you're not familiar with Code for Murder and sort of the background there, or kind of what's going on in her life as a character, I think this will kind of introduce you to her and kind of explain some of the conflict that is going on in this particular scene. We open up this chapter. She and her partner, Austin Serrera, and a SWAT team are getting ready to ambush a safe house where they are looking for a dirty cop who has some connections to the previous investigation that Stacy was working on in Code for Murder. So it kind of ties up, this chapter does sort of ties up some loose ends that happened at the end of Code for Murder that weren't totally resolved. And so this comes from chapter 2, and I'll just read for about 6 minutes. But again, if you're new to the Stacy Tabbitt storyline and new to her as a character, I think this will give you some insight into who she is now and kind of what she's experienced in the past. So this is chapter 2. Stacy Tabbitt secured the second strap of the bulletproof vest around her back and took a final look at the Glock 22 in her hand. She loved its design, admired its strength and durability, and the bind-free action it provided, especially for dangerous assignments like this. Her partner, Austin Serrera, approached. "I don't think this is a good idea." Stacy's belt held a .40 Glock hanging from a strap and a P226 pistol secured on the other side. "It doesn't matter, Austin. I'm ready. I want to get this guy." Austin double-checked with the rest of the team. 8 men, all members of the Cleveland Police Department SWAT team. Some of them had been with Stacy and Austin on dangerous assignments before, but some of the men were new, and Austin barely remembered their names. "It does matter, Stacy," Austin said. "We can handle this. I don't think you being here is necessary." The sun was coming up over the city's eastern side, throwing streaks of silver and gold over the clearing where the police had established a command center. "I need to be here, Austin, and I want to be here," Stacy said. "Brandon Deerfield was the last person to see my brother. He and Chance were the only ones in that cruiser that got T-boned by that truck." Austin sighed. "He wouldn't talk to me about it. Remember when we questioned him?" "I do." "He didn't talk because he's dirty. Maybe the threat of going to prison will get Brandon to talk. Plus, there's nothing worse than a dirty cop." Stacy lifted her head and held a steady stare on her partner. "I want to end this, once and for all." Austin sighed and put a hand on Stacy's shoulder. Stacy frowned. "What about your breathing?" Stacy blanched. "Well, what about it?" "What if we get close and you start coughing or can't breathe? It could put all of us in danger." Stacy, appearing hurt at the assertion, shook her head. "Thank you, doctor, but I know what I can and can't do." Austin remained silent. Stacy placed a hand on Austin's chest. He stumbled back a step. "I don't want to be treated differently because of the injury. I've been dealing with it now for over a year, and it hasn't affected my ability to do the job." Austin's face went red and then pale. "Really? How about that shooting we went on last month in East Cleveland? I can remember you leaning against the wall of that alley sucking wind. We had plenty of backup, but if you'd been alone..." Austin paused, then waved off the comment. "That guy who was killed was a drug dealer and a drug runner for Deerfield. That murder led us here, remember?" "Forget it," Austin said. "I should know by now that if you want to do something, you're going to do it." Stacy gripped the Glock tighter with one hand and tapped Austin under the chin with the other. "Austin, I would never allow it to put any of us in danger. I know myself and how I operate better than anybody. And you were the one that asked me if I wanted to be a part of this operation. You asked me to come along, remember?" "I did, but in a support role." Stacy huffed. "And what about Diana?" Stacy arched an eyebrow. "Well, what about her?" "She thinks your part in this is in a supportive role." Stacy shrugged off the comment. "I can handle the captain." Austin set his jaw. "Fine, let's move out before daylight arrives." Austin turned his back to Stacy and made a circular motion with his hand. The rest of the men, clad in dark camouflage attire along with goggles and bulletproof vests, jostled their weapons. The team carried a mix of M4 carbine guns, MP5-10 submachine guns, and 40 Glock pistols close to their bodies. The weapons were heavy, deadly, and needed to take on a situation that might turn lethal quickly. As the group huddled together, Stacy whispered, "Be careful and expect anything. At least one of these guys is a cop, and he knows we're good at surprises." The men refused to look at Stacy. Austin moved ahead of the group first. The solid-built, full-blooded Hispanic with stocky legs and broad shoulders like slabs of granite offered a figure that was easy to follow. They moved away from the clearing by Shady Lane Road and headed into the wooded expanse. Austin gave a signal, and half of the team fanned out to the right. Austin moved straight ahead, and Stacy veered to the left. Everyone tested the radio equipment attached to their headsets and then went silent. A chill coursed through Stacy. Her body shivered. Early May in Cleveland had been mild but chilly. Stacy watched as the urban scene around her changed. An embedded and untouched trail ran down the middle of the clearing. She followed it cautiously. As Stacy walked down the footpath, a pink layer of light dappled the sky above her, reducing her need for a flashlight. A cold wind tore aggressively in and around the twisted, naked tree branches. Each person on the team remained silent. Pockets of standing water puddled together, resembling small, cloudy pools. Where there was no ponding, the ground was soft and muddy, and Stacy could feel her boots sink and grow heavy. Austin had led the team through the surveillance work on the property. The safe house was 200 yards into the wooded clearing from the main road. Stacy thought when she heard that information, this idea, that thugs like them always love places in the woods, like the snakes that they are. Stacy hadn't counted his steps yet, but she figured that Austin was about 75 yards in. As daylight continued to burn off the night overhead, Stacy noticed an interesting track of disturbed earth, just off to the right of the path. She pulled out her flashlight and shined it up ahead. The streaks broke like tentacles off the path, with smaller piles of dirt humped over them. The long lines looked fresh, and Stacy stopped. "Unit 1, hold up for a minute." A beat passed before Austin's hushed voice came back over the earpiece. "Why, what is it?" "I found some tracks and a mound of mud in the ground," Stacy said. "I want to check it out before we move forward." Another voice came over the line, this one sharp and irritated. "Lieutenant, we're ready to close in. We see the outline of the house." "It could be animal tracks," Austin said. "Stacy, this is—" Stacy didn't wait for approval. She crouched down and shined her light on the tracks. She checked around and behind her, making sure the flashlight wouldn't draw attention from unwanted company. Stacy flicked away some of the mud. She shined the light closer to find a thin, white wire encased in dirt and snow. The wire resembled one that would be used in an explosive. Stacy felt her heart race and her throat clench. She brushed aside a little more mud and saw that the wire extended along a narrow trench leading to a mound. "Shit." Stacy pressed the helmet mic close to her mouth. "Austin, what I'm seeing is not animal tracks." "Okay, stop everybody," Austin huffed. "Let's wait for just a minute." Stacy tried to speak, but she was cut off. This time, the tone that came across the earpiece was rushed and panicked. Shots fired, shots fired, the voice hollered, and Stacy could hear the pop of sprayed bullets through the earpiece and in the open space. The communication went silent for a moment before Stacy broke in. "Austin, call those guys back." Before anything else was said, a large explosion rocked the clearing. As the earth shook beneath her feet, Stacy dropped to her stomach as the right side of the wooded clearing illuminated in deep hues of orange and red, and thick gray smoke billowed into the skies. A veil of darkness now shaded the once pale pink sky. Smoke poured up, and thin, bright orange flames snaked their way between the rows of trees. "Christ!" Stacy made a fist and pounded it on the ground. A strained voice croaked from Unit 1. "Man down, taking fire, smoke and flames." And I'll stop right there for now.
Wow, that was very exciting.
It really
Great. So glad you enjoyed it.
That was awesome.
So I'd ask, but what's going to happen next? But clearly, that would defeat the whole.
Well, I can tell you they reached the safe house. The SWAT team does take some casualties as a result of the explosion, but Stacy does get to the safe house and she does find Brandon Deerfield. So by the end of that chapter, she's able to accomplish what she had set out to do. But there's some more bumps along the way in addition to the explosion. But she's able to get the guy she's looking for eventually. But it comes with a little bit of a cost.
Excellent. So, Eliot, so you write literary fiction and thrillers.
Right.
And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about I mean, is that just two different worlds, both in terms of like the business of writing, like dealing with different kinds of publishers, different processes, and also just in terms of creative process? Are there really two Eliot Parkers?
No, there's definitely just one Eliot Parker, I think. Although sometimes I wonder if I'm getting split down the middle, sort of like Two-Face in the Dark Knight series. But to answer your question about creative process, I feel like as a writer, I learned how to write doing short stories. That was the first kind of genre I experimented with as a writer. And I feel like that is a genre I really enjoy, and it's a genre I'm comfortable with. And so I started writing short stories, not necessarily thriller short stories, but just to kind of get an understanding of how plot worked, of how character worked, of how the plot structure and the climax and the resolution works. Short stories helped me in that regard, because you've only got 7,000 to 10,000 words or less sometimes to tell a really good story that captivates and hooks a reader and gets them interested all the way through in a short story where you've got 250, sometimes 300 pages in a novel. So I feel like I sort of cut my teeth as a writer and learned the writing process and the creative process through short story writing. But thrillers as a reader had always been my favorite. Going back to when I was in elementary school, I used to love the Encyclopedia Brown mysteries, and then Scholastic, when I was in grade school, had these choose your mystery books where you would read up to like page 20. And if you wanted Bob to do something, you turned to page 45. And if you wanted him to do something else, you turned to page 25 or something like that. And you ended up getting two different stories in one book. And I loved those. So that was where my interest in thrillers really came from. In terms of kind of the business side, I've been really encouraged over the last few years. And I know that you guys probably are aware of this. And I know some of your guests have commented on this. That it's so great to see short stories and short story collections really making a comeback in terms of a marketable, publishable set of literature. I can remember 10 or 12 years ago listening to publishers and literary agents say, don't you dare send me a short story collection, it won't sell, or we can't find a home for it. And now when you go to a bookstore or you go online or you follow writing on Twitter or Facebook or whatever it may be, you see short story collections getting published all the time, and you see them winning a lot of national prizes and awards for their excellence. And so it's good to see thrillers as a creative sort of a business genre staying strong, but it's also great to see kind of the short story make a reemergence, because for me, when I'm in between writing thrillers too, or if I'm stuck in a certain point in a thriller, it's good to go back to the short story genre and experiment with that a little bit to kind of keep my mind fresh and to kind of take my mind off of where I am. So it's great for me to do both of those. Really, it's a lot of fun to create both stories in both of those areas and genres.
Cool.
So I have a follow-up to that. So, well, one thing I think is that this is maybe one of the good things about the shortened attention span from the internet is that short fiction and non and microfiction are suddenly very popular. They've always been incredibly wonderful genres, and those of us who are regular readers and writers of those forms know that well. But it took this whole shrinking of attention span, I think, partly to get people to reacquaint them with those forms. My next question, though, is about this split in this. Are there two Eliots? Productivity. I mean, we're all professors on this stage at the moment. And I know that my writing often takes, second, third, fourth, fifth place to all the other work that we have to do in our academic careers. How do you make time to do all this writing? Because you're very prolific.
Well, for me, Christina, the easiest way that I have been able to do it, I've tried a lot of different methods. I have tried weekend writing seclusions where you just disappear for 2 or 3 days and don't tell anybody where you're going and do that. I've had some success with that over the years. I've tried, the early morning, getting up really early in the morning and writing, and that has helped some. That helped me some when I was living and working and teaching in West Virginia. That really helped because I had more classes and more going on, and the only time I could squeeze it in was to do it early in the morning. But the only way I've been able to do it and to make progress is I just carve out a certain amount of time every day and do it. I just build it into my Outlook calendar, just like I do class, just like I do office hours, just like I do grading time. I just build in a block. I try to build in 2-hour blocks. I feel like that gives me enough time to kind of make some progress. But I just have to build it into my daily calendar. I try to write, 5 days a week at least. Some weeks I write more, but I try to stick to at least 5 days. Those don't have to be consecutive days. Sometimes it's, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Sometimes it's Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. Just depends on what's going on. But I have found for me that if I don't block out that time, there's going to be something else that's always encroaching on that time. There's going to be, laundry to do. There's going to be dishes to do. There's going to be grocery store trips that have to be made. There's going to be errands that have to be done. There's just those things of life that will creep in. That will eat away at that time if you don't block off time in your week and say, today at 10 o'clock, this is writing time. And I'm turning my phone off. I'm turning the computer off. Other than Word, I'm turning off the TV and just hunkering down. That has been the best way for me to make progress, because I found that otherwise, if I don't do that, then all the other things of life, eat away at your time. And it's amazing how those little things do eat away at your writing time. And next thing you go, the 2 hours that you thought you were going to have are gone if you don't kind of block off that time. So that's what's worked well for me.
I think you're exactly right about that. For those of us who can't quite get up in the morning and other bad habits, or maybe, that could be a title of my next book, and other bad habits. I do that with swimming. I swim every day at the same time, and I have a trigger for it. Like, I close my MacBook and it's 1 o'clock. That means there's only one place I'm supposed to be, and it's in my swimsuit and walking out the front door. So I think that, that is amazing. I have never had a high quality writing practice since I did my dissertation back in a long time ago. And that's because my dissertation director was hounding me for stuff. So maybe I need to call my now retired dissertation director and have her call me every day and go, how many words you got, Fasonic? So that's awesome, though. Thank you for sharing that process with us, because that is something I think every writer has that question, novice writers and practiced writers, because sometimes routines that work for us early in our writing career don't work for us later for X, whatever, insert whatever reason. So that was very helpful. Thank you.
Oh, sure. And, I do 2-hour blocks, and I tell students that I teach that are getting into writing, and when I do, speak to groups and at conferences and things, and I say, if 2 hours is too much, maybe if you can just squeeze in 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour or whatever it is, depending on your situation and your circumstances, find that time to do it. If you really want to make progress on a project or an idea that you have, even if it's 30 minutes, 3 days a week, if that's all the time that you have, then set aside that time, because it really does make a big difference.
Well, I think one of the keys too is days when you feel like nothing creative is actually happening. There's plenty of business of writing stuff to do. And I'm kind of like, okay, well, maybe I'm not going to commit any great literature, but I'll be damned if I can't, put something in an envelope and send it off.
Oh, absolutely. And I have found that sometimes either I'm slow to get started in that 2-hour block, or maybe for whatever reason at the hour 15, hour and 20, hour and 30 minute mark, I'm done for that particular day, or I've written to a point where I need to stop and think more about where am I going to go next, especially if I'm writing a thriller and I've just kind of dropped a red herring in at the end of this chapter. Now I got to think about, okay, how am I going to wrap that around to the other subplot or the main plot that's going to be resolved later. And I'll do exactly what you're talking about, Damien. I'll do some business of writing stuff. Maybe that is responding to email. Maybe that is going to Submittable and submitting some things. Maybe that is talking to my editor about an idea that I've got, or about a comment she made on my last draft. Whatever it may be. So I try to do something. If I don't always get that writing done, then I can use that time for the business of writing. And sometimes it's just reaching out to writer friends. Like I did that the other day. I was writing and I'd forgotten to wish Christina a Happy New Year. And I saw she had posted something or liked something, and it said, Christina Fasanic liked this. And I was like, oh, I forgot to wish her Happy New Year. So I used my time. I took a few minutes from my writing time and went on Facebook and wished her Happy New Year. And so, sometimes Yes, that's right. That's right. And then I found out about the show and got an invite to the show. So sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's just reaching out to writer friends and just saying, hey, haven't seen your talk to you in a while. How are things going? How are you doing? I can't tell you as a writer myself how nice that is to hear from folks,
Yes.
especially when you're having those days when things aren't flowing smoothly from a creative sense. So, yeah.
Definitely staying connected into that writing community is vital, especially on rough writing days.
Absolutely. And I think we've all learned over the last couple of years where we haven't been able to go to conferences, we haven't been able to go to in-person readings as often as maybe we did before, how important that writing community is, and how important, a Zoom chat or a Facebook message conversation with some folks in your writing tribe, how important that is. I think it's gained more importance over the last couple of years.
Right on. So before we let you go, Eliot, I do have one quick question. In Code for Murder, how much time is spent eliminating Antonio Brown as a suspect?
Well,
I knew it was going to be a football joke. I knew it.
Well, I tell you, given the fact that I am a Browns fan, and given the fact that he did play for the Steelers at one time, yes, he could and should be eliminated in fiction. Boy, he's got some issues. He's got to get himself straightened out. I don't know what's wrong with him. I don't know if he's got the Kyrie Irving crazy thing in his brain or something. He's got to get something straightened out. I will tell you something funny though about Code for Murder. I was at a book signing at the Ohio WANA Book Festival in Columbus, which is a great book festival. If you ever get a chance to be a part of that as a writer or go as a visitor, it's a wonderful book festival. A lot of fun, a lot of great workshops, all kinds of fun stuff. But I was sitting there, it was towards the end of the day, and we were doing the signing. I'd spoken on a panel about mystery writing, and then we had a little book signing, or an individual book signing at a small table. And it was towards the end of the day, and the lady came up to me, and she read the back of the book, and she said, "Oh, so the Cleveland Browns are featured in this?" I said, "Yes." And she kind of put her hand on her hip and kind of cocked her head to the side, and she said, "You know what? If they had a killer after them, maybe they'd play football a little better." And she put the book down and walked away. And I was like, that's the best thing ever. That's good. Because the Browns weren't doing very well at that particular. They just come off a 3-13 season or something like that. And so that comment has stuck with me a lot when I think about Code for Murder, is her saying that, if the Browns had somebody after them trying to kill them, maybe they'd play a little better. So maybe that's what we need to do to motivate Antonio to get himself straightened out, get somebody after him on a more aggressive level. I don't know, but he's got some problems. So he's a mess.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Eliot, for coming on tonight. We really enjoyed your reading. Can you hold that book up one more time?
Yeah, sure thing. I'll hold them both up. This is Code for Murder, and let me switch them around here. Here we go. Code for Murder is the first book in the series, and A Final Call is the one that I read from tonight. So you can get these anywhere you like to buy books. But if you have a local independent bookstore in your community, please support them, because they do so much to help writers at all levels and all stages get the word out about our books and host us for readings and signings. And so hopefully we can get back to that soon. But thank you all so much for having me. It was really a pleasure.
Well, thank you, Eliot. It was so nice talking with you again. It was wonderful.
Great talking with you guys. Thanks again. And thanks for all the good work you do on your show.
Thank you, Eliot.
Next week, we have a special guest.
Next week we have.
Do you want to tell everybody?
Yes. Next week we've got Pittsburgh literary legend, the poet Jan Beatty, who just released the award-winning memoir American Bastard. So we are super excited about this. We hope you will join us next week at 8 p.m. for Jan Beatty. I'm Damian Dressick. This is Christina Pisonic.
Yes, and we will see everybody next week. Bye, everyone. Be safe out there.